Hello and welcome back to Premier Injuries. Today we've got a very special injury data show that we do for you here on a Monday, looking at some of the stuff that we have been looking at over the past few weeks and months, just to give you an insight into what we do here. And just before we go into this discussion, remember to like, share and subscribe to the channel, because we've got lots of great analysis like this, like Dr. Raj. We do FPL stuff, and as well, we can tease that we've got some great guests lined up in the summer as well. We'll let you know about that at a later date, but just a little bit of a teaser there. And I did tease it last week as well, Ben, before we get into discussions. Do you notice anything different about me?
Is it the glasses, Jay? The headphones? Headphones? You've changed it to t-shirt?
It is in this area.
It's in it. Is it? You haven't had your hair cut, have you?
Mate, I have.
You haven't had that trim?
Looking fresh, mate.
You're looking sharp. Of course. How could I not notice? Look at that.
I hope the viewers noticed as well. But yes, you came in looking so sharp last week, and I felt a little bit embarrassed. I had to catch up with you.
Yeah, maybe you did, because I was shining. I was taking the light away from you, and I was looking pretty hot, if I do see it for myself. But you're back up to a 6.5.
I'll take that. I'll take that. 6.5. I mean, Arsenal could do with the 6.5 or 7. I mean, what the hell is going on at the moment? Just a final question on haircuts. How many canny lasses messaged you last week because you're looking so on point?
I lost count. I really did lose count. I mean, must have been in the thousands, I think it was.
Fair enough.
Inundated. Going out on dates. But unfortunately, I'm taking 4, so,
That's what you got to
do. you had to get in 11 years ago, because unfortunately, that's how long I've been stuck with this one.
All right, we need to move on, because before anything more controversial is said. So yeah, let's go into the injury discussions, because there seems to be a lot of injuries at the moment. You kind of looked at data a few weeks ago saying how many injuries there are over these game weeks. But what is more pronounced at the moment is it's not only more injuries, but more serious ones. So is this normal, or is this kind of anomalous for this time of the season?
Yeah, so what prompted this? We've obviously seen some high profile, significant setbacks in recent weeks. If we look at Wolverhampton Wanderers, the Johnny MCL and ACL rupture, Pedro Neto, teammate, we're looking at a fractured patella, Trezeguet, serious knee ligament injury, Jamal Lascelles, stress fracture of the foot. These are all, well, we think probably all season-ending injuries. And it sort of begged the question, are we seeing more significant and long-term injuries this season compared to others? And also, do we see more compared to earlier on in the season, during those? So what we took, the set was, we looked at very similar to what we did with the previous sort of data load that we had. We looked at the first 30 game weeks of a season, and then we took a look at what we consider, the business end. This period just after the international break, where players are pushing for, honours, qualification spots, looking to maybe get out of the relegation zone, and just to see those sort of any anomalies or any differences between all of that data.
And so, kind of continuing this discussion point, do we normally see more serious injuries in the latter half of the season?
I was quite surprised to learn that the data itself has been fairly consistent season on season. So although there seems to be quite a lot of high profile injuries this season, for example, it's pretty much in line with what we've seen in other seasons. I think what maybe tends to skew the data or skew your maybe perception of these injuries is when they happen. And all of these injuries have happened really close together, within the space of a sort of 7 to 10 day period. And almost it's at the forefront of your mind, and it asks the question. But the data certainly doesn't, tell us anything that is necessarily untoward this season, which I must admit I did find a little bit surprising.
So would you say then that this season is not especially pronounced? Because we've looked at our data kind of game week 30 to 38 in terms of goals scored, goals conceded, defensive, attacking data. And we found some pretty fascinating stuff. Just to remind people, you can go back and look at our 2 videos, especially on when teams have nothing to play for. So are you saying that there isn't this huge effect like we found with maybe goal scoring and goals conceded?
Well, we started the season and we expected, with the quick turnaround and just, that lack of break and preparation, we expected that to be, a few more injuries than typically we would expect to see. And that was reflected in the data. So during those early game weeks, we've seen around about a 24 to 25% increase in reported absence, during those first maybe 6 to 8 game weeks. However, that data sort of started to taper and fall as we approach Christmas. And as we got to, the beginning of the new year, that was closer to maybe sort of 9 or 10%. And there were a number of reasons behind that. The way the fixtures fell this year, typically around maybe Christmas, like that hectic fixture period where you can see maybe 3, 4, and 5 games in quick succession. Well, that didn't happen this year. We didn't have a game just before Christmas. Teams were afforded maybe 5 to 6 day rest period. So that certainly worked in their favour. And then also you had the teams who were absent or missing through COVID-19. So you had maybe the likes of Everton, I think Tottenham, Fulham, Manchester City, Newcastle, Villa, teams that did miss periods of games, which, for those players who were maybe okay, it was almost an opportunity of that, that midwinter break that we talked about, an opportunity just to sort of ease back and maybe, step back from the training pitch and almost re-energize. But what we did see and what we did expect was, as we come to the end of January and February, we started to see the numbers rise again. And I think we've covered this before on a podcast. The best way to describe it is almost this cumulative effect of fatigue, which is increased incidence for and risk for soft tissue and muscular tears. And it's almost like a bucket where you've got a drip and tap, and almost you can play and it's fine, but almost when the water gets to the top of that bucket, it overflows, and that's when you start to pick up these injuries. And we're currently, we're well above average in terms of where we are compared to comparable previous seasons. But from the first half of the season to this running period, the data has been fairly static, and we see that across the board really of the last few seasons. Very little difference in terms of both when those injuries occur and the length of absence that these players tend to spend on the sidelines.
So moving it towards the end of our discussions here, what can we look and expect towards the end of this season?
Look, I think this season, we just don't know, because we've never had a season like it before. We've got a very small data set in the, if we look at maybe this post-international break, we're only coming into the 3rd game week that hasn't been completed yet. And the data itself doesn't suggest that we can expect anything out of the norm. But again, we're talking about a contact sport here. We can talk about how you can have a run or a glut of injuries that can come together. And so we just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we've had Kevin De Bruyne, who's picked up an injury there at the weekend. We don't know the severity of that. We know Harry Kane's picked up an injury. Again, we don't know the severity of that. There's some suggestion, Lacazette, hamstring injury. those assessments are ongoing at the time of recording, but there's nothing to say that they may not go beyond maybe 2 or possibly even 3 weeks or even end the season. And again, these types of injuries will influence and have an impact on the data that we collect.
So, just a final closing question for you here, Ben. You mentioned that we don't know, and this is a very unique situation, but can you make an educated guess that players will be able to recover in the closed season? Or does the data that we have suggest that the Euros might actually make it bad going forward into next season as well?
Uh, Absolutely. We've looked at historical data when players have been involved in international tournaments, World Cup, Euros, and what we've seen in the preceding season is players that not only who've been involved in those types of tournament will pick up on average more injuries than players who haven't been involved and who've had a proper pre-season, but the time that they spend out on the sidelines with similar injuries are actually increased as well. So there's a fact in that. And, ultimately, the science will tell us that, if you're not able to, fulfill a thorough, methodical, well planned out thought pre-season program, then you are going to be more susceptible to picking up injuries throughout the course of that season. And of course, those players coming off the back of the Euros are going to have a heavily disrupted season. I think if you're going to reach the latter stages of that tournament, you're maybe looking at possibly 4, maybe 5 weeks before the start of the new season. Of that, players are probably going to get maybe 2 to 3 weeks rest. So they may be going into a new campaign on the back of what would be a very watered down, 2-week preseason program, if that. So, it's a concern. And then we're heading into the World Cup again after that. So your players are going to be extremely fatigued.
So that is the end of the discussions for today. And just kind of applying what we've looked at here to FPL. That's why we say that it might not look nice. You might want to spread your money and spend it into certain FPL players. That's the application for FPL, though, that you want strong benches and that you want basically every player in your squad to be playing each game week so that you've got somebody there to come off the bench if somebody does get injured. Like we saw Calvert-Lewin, no clue that that was going to happen. And then at least you got somebody there to get 1 or 2 points for you. But as well, just to say thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe the Premier Injuries channel because we've got a lot of good content like this coming towards the end of the season, but also through the summer and into next season to help you with your footballing decisions. But for now, a goodbye from me, passing it over to Mr. Ben himself.
Yeah, thanks, Jace. Yeah, another fantastic show. Short and sweet, just how I like it. And yeah, thanks for following, guys. Lots of great content coming out this week. We've got games, I think, Liverpool and Leeds, and I think we've got nine nights of football in a row. So, this protracted game week 32 that we're in will be stretched until Thursday. But keep your eyes and ears peeled for defensive and attacking assets, which will be going out while this game week is still in full flow. But for now, we're done.